The fortress moon of Calthrek hung in the dark sky like a giant metal sphere. Its surface was covered with buildings, training grounds, and weapons that pointed toward the stars. For 100 years, this moon had one purpose: to prepare warriors for the conquest of Earth. Supreme Commander Thralxus stood at the observation deck of the Central Command Tower. He was massive, even for his species. 8 feet tall with thick armor plates covering his body, 4 powerful arms and eyes that could see in complete darkness. Behind him, dozens of military leaders watched the training grounds below. On the surface, millions of Rexian warriors practiced their combat techniques. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons firing at holographic targets that looked like humans. The holograms ran, hid, and tried to fight back. But the Vrexian warriors destroyed them easily. Every single time. Another perfect exercise, said one of the officers. The warriors are ready, Commander. Thralxus nodded slowly. He had watched these training sessions for decades. He had designed many of them himself. The Vrexian Empire had conquered 47 star systems, but never before had they prepared so carefully for a single world. Tell me again about the humans, Thralxus said to his intelligence officer. The officer activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared in the air. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds. It looked peaceful. Beautiful, even. The humans call their planet Earth, the officer began. They are a young species. They have only recently developed basic space travel. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. They still use chemical explosives and kinetic weapons. Kinetic weapons? Another officer laughed. Like throwing rocks? Essentially, yes, the intelligence officer confirmed. They shoot pieces of metal at each other using controlled explosions. It is very crude. Thralxus studied the images carefully. He had watched hundreds of hours of human broadcasts. The humans sent their entertainment signals into space, never thinking about who might be listening. The Vrexians had intercepted everything: their news, their movies, their television shows, their music. Show me their military again, Thralxus commanded. The display changed. It showed human soldiers in combat. They wore soft fabric uniforms, not armor. They carried small weapons that fired tiny projectiles. They drove vehicles that moved on wheels, not hover technology. They fought in deserts, jungles, and cities, always against other humans. They fight among themselves constantly, the intelligence officer explained. They have divided their planet into nearly 200 separate nations. These nations argue over land, resources, and ideas. They have been fighting each other for their entire history. Divided? Thralxus asked. They have no unified government? None, Commander. Each nation has its own military, its own leaders, its own goals. They compete against each other constantly. This information pleased Thralxus greatly. A divided enemy was a weak enemy. When the Vrexian fleet arrived, the humans would argue about what to do. Some nations would want to surrender. Others would want to fight. They would waste precious time making decisions while the Vrexian warriors secured the planet. What about their weapons of mass destruction? Asked another officer. Our scouts detected nuclear devices. Yes, they have nuclear bombs, the intelligence officer confirmed. But these weapons are very primitive. They used them twice in a war against themselves over 80 years ago. Since then, they have been afraid to use them again. They built many of these bombs, but they point them at each other, not at the sky. The officers laughed at this. What kind of species built weapons and then became too afraid to use them? They are weak, one officer declared. They build weapons they are afraid to use. They fight among themselves over foolish things. They broadcast their entertainment to the galaxy like children seeking attention. Thralxus had heard this opinion many times. He had even agreed with it at first. But something about the humans bothered him. He could not explain it even to himself. Perhaps it was the way they fought in their movies and shows. They seemed to enjoy violence, to celebrate it, even while claiming to want peace. Commander, the invasion fleet is fully assembled, his second-in-command reported. 500 warships, 2 million elite warriors. We await only your command to depart. Thralxus looked at the fleet through the observation window. The ships floated in formation around Calthrek, so many that they blocked out the stars. Each ship carried advanced weapons, energy shields, and troops that had trained their entire lives for this mission. 2 million warriors. All born and raised to conquer Earth. They had studied human anatomy and knew exactly where to strike to kill quickly. They had practiced against holographic humans until they could defeat 10 of them without taking a single hit. They were ready. What do our projections say about casualties? Thralxus asked. Minimal, Commander. The intelligence officer replied. We estimate fewer than 100 warriors lost during the entire conquest. Most human nations will surrender immediately when they see our forces. The few that resist will be crushed quickly. And the timeline? 72 hours from landing to complete planetary control. 96 hours maximum if they organize better than expected. 3 to 4 days to conquer an entire planet. That would be a new record for the Vrexian Empire. The other conquests had taken weeks, sometimes months. But those species had been unified. They had fought together. The humans would fight alone, nation against nation, unable to cooperate even in the face of extinction. Thrallaxis made his decision. Send the order. The fleet departs at dawn. The officers saluted and rushed to their stations. Throughout the fortress moon, alarms sounded. Warriors gathered their equipment and boarded their ships. Engineers performed final checks on weapon systems. Navigators plotted the course to Earth. That evening, Thrallaxis addressed his warriors. All 2 million of them watched on screens throughout the fleet. He spoke with confidence and power. Warriors of the Vrexian Empire, he began. For 100 years we have prepared for this day. We have studied our enemy. We have trained against their tactics. We have built weapons specifically to defeat them. And now the time has come. He paused, looking at the camera with all 4 of his eyes. The humans are weak. They fight among themselves like children. They have no unity, no strength, no honor. They will see our ships and surrender. The few who fight will die quickly. This will be the easiest conquest in our history. We will land on their planet and they will kneel before the might of the Vrexian Empire. The warriors cheered. Their voices echoed through the ships, full of confidence and certainty. They had trained for 100 years. They were ready. Victory was certain. The fleet activated its hyperspace drives. One by one, the 500 warships disappeared from normal space, traveling faster than light toward the Sol system, toward Earth, toward humanity. Supreme Commander Thrallaxis watched his homeworld fade from view. In a few days, he would stand on Earth's surface and accept the surrender of the human leaders. The Vrexian Empire would control 48 star systems. Earth would provide new resources, new slaves, new territory. It would be glorious. It would be easy. At least that was what he believed. The journey to Earth took 3 days. During that time, the warriors reviewed their training. They studied maps of human cities. They memorized the locations of military bases. They prepared their weapons and armor. No one questioned the mission. No one worried about failure. They were Vrexian warriors and the humans were weak. The intelligence report said so. The training simulations proved it. There was no doubt. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Sensors immediately detected the blue planet orbiting its yellow star. It looked just like the pictures, beautiful, peaceful, helpless. Send the surrender demand, Thrallaxis ordered. The communication officer broadcast the message in every human language. Surrender your planet. Resistance is futile. You have 1 solar rotation to comply. The response came faster than expected. The human sent no words, only a simple message that played on every frequency. A recording of a human voice speaking 2 words in a language called English. Come closer. Thrallaxis smiled. The humans wanted to be brave. They wanted to pretend they were not afraid. That was fine. Fear would come soon enough. Begin the approach, he commanded. Prepare all forces for planetary assault. The fleet moved forward, closing the distance to Earth. The invasion had begun. The alarm bells rang across every continent on Earth. In Tokyo, sirens wailed through the streets. In New York, emergency broadcasts interrupted every television program. In Moscow, military bases went to full alert. In Beijing, the government activated protocols that had been written but never tested. In Seoul, South Korea, General Tae-young received the call at 3 a.m. He was already awake. He had been watching the news for hours, ever since the deep space telescopes detected the alien fleet. All military commanders report to Central Command immediately, the voice on his phone said. Tae-young dressed quickly in his uniform. His wife watched him from the bed, her face pale with fear. Is it really happening? She asked. Are they really coming? Yes, Tae-young said simply. He kissed her forehead. Stay inside. Keep the children home. Do not go outside until you hear the all-clear signal. Will there be an all-clear signal? Tae-young did not answer. He did not know. At the United Nations building in New York, Secretary General Dae-hyun stood before an emergency assembly of world leaders. The large hall was completely full. Every nation had sent representatives. Even countries that were at war with each other sat side by side, united by something bigger than their conflicts. "The alien fleet has sent us a message," Daehyun said, his voice steady despite the fear he felt. "They demand our surrender. They have given us 24 hours to comply." The hall erupted in angry voices. Leaders shouted in dozens of different languages. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for negotiations. A few suggested surrender to save lives. "Silence," Daehyun commanded. "We do not have time for arguments. Every hour we waste is an hour the enemy uses to get closer. We must decide now together, as one species." The American president stood. "Our military forces are ready. We have nuclear weapons that can reach them before they land." "As do we," the Russian premier added. "But using nuclear weapons in space could create debris that damages our own satellites." The Chinese chairman spoke next. "This is no time to worry about satellites. If we do not stop them, we will have no use for satellites." Daehyun raised his hand for silence again. "I propose a unified command structure. Every nation contributes its military forces to one central command. We fight as Earth, not as separate countries." "Impossible," someone shouted. "We cannot trust our weapons to foreign commanders." "Then we die as divided nations," Daehyun replied coldly. "Is that what you prefer?" The room went quiet. Leaders looked at each other, decades of distrust and competition heavy in the air. But behind that distrust was something stronger: the survival instinct, the desire to live, the need to protect their children and their people. The vote took only 30 minutes. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed to act as one. All military forces would report to a unified command structure. All weapon systems would be coordinated. All soldiers would fight under one flag: the flag of Earth. In military bases around the world, soldiers received their orders. Ancient enemies became instant allies. Russian pilots trained with American pilots. Chinese soldiers coordinated with Indian soldiers. Israeli and Palestinian commanders shared intelligence. Korean and Japanese naval forces sailed together. In a bunker deep beneath Seoul, General Tae-young took command of the Pacific Defense Zone. He had fought in the Korean military for 30 years, but he had never imagined commanding troops from 20 different nations. "General, all forces report ready," his aide said. Tae-young looked at the screens showing troop positions: Japanese destroyers, American submarines, Chinese missile batteries, Australian air squadrons, all waiting for his command. All trusting him to lead them. "Connect me to all unit commanders," he said. Faces appeared on his screen: American, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, Vietnamese, Thai, Australian, Indian, dozens of nationalities. Hundreds of years of conflict between them, but now they all looked at him with the same expression: determination. "Commanders," Tae-young began. "We have been enemies. We have fought wars against each other. We have killed each other's soldiers. But today we are brothers and sisters. Today we are all human. And today we show these invaders what happens when they threaten our home." The commanders saluted, not to a Korean general, but to their commander, their leader, one of them. On the streets of Seoul, civilian Sung-ho watched the news on his phone. He was a construction worker, 40 years old, with a wife and 2 children. He had never been a soldier. He had never even held a gun. But he saw the alien ships on the screen and he felt something he had never felt before: rage. These creatures were coming to take his world, his city, his home, his children's future, and they expected him to surrender? Sung-ho was not alone. Across the world, millions of civilians felt the same anger. They gathered in the streets not to panic or flee, but to demand weapons, to volunteer, to fight. In Busan, marine biologist Hai Wan stopped her research on whale migration and looked at the ocean. She had dedicated her life to studying peaceful creatures. She had never hurt anything larger than a mosquito, but she thought about the aliens landing in her ocean, polluting her waters, killing her whales. She went to the nearest military recruitment center and volunteered. By the time the alien fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, Earth had transformed. Every military base operated at full capacity. Every soldier stood ready. Every weapon was armed and targeted. But more importantly, something had changed in the human spirit. The divisions that had seemed so important just days ago Nationality, race, religion, politics suddenly meant nothing. There was only one division now, human and alien, us and them. In a small apartment in Seoul, elementary school teacher Gina prepared her classroom for students who might never come back. She had taught kindergarten for 15 years. She loved children. She loved peace. She loved teaching kids to share and be kind. But Gina had a secret. Before she became a teacher, she had served in the special forces. She had trained in combat, weapons, and survival. She had left that life behind because she wanted to build things, not destroy them. Now, looking at the alien ships on the news, Gina opened a locked closet in her home. Inside were things she had not touched in years: combat knives, equipment, training manuals. She had hoped to never touch them again. She loaded her equipment into a bag and headed to the school. If the aliens came to her neighborhood, they would find a teacher. But they would face a soldier. The alien fleet continued its approach. The Vrexian sensors detected the military mobilization on Earth, but Supreme Commander Thralxus was not concerned. He had expected this. Primitive species always tried to look strong before they surrendered. They are preparing their armies, his intelligence officer reported. Significant troop movements across all continents. Let them prepare, Thralxus said. Their primitive weapons cannot hurt our ships. Our shields will deflect their missiles. We will land and they will realize their resistance is meaningless. But one of his officers looked worried. Commander, I am seeing something unusual. The humans are broadcasting on military frequencies. They are coordinating between nations, so according to our intelligence, they do not do this. They keep military secrets from each other. They compete and hide information. But now they are sharing everything. Weapon positions, troop numbers, tactical plans, everything. Thralxus considered this. They are desperate. When species face extinction, they sometimes set aside their differences. It will not matter. They are still primitive, still weak. In Earth orbit, astronauts aboard the International Space Station received unusual orders. The station, built as a symbol of peaceful international cooperation, had a secret. Hidden in several modules were weapons that had been installed years ago, just in case humanity ever needed to defend itself from space. The astronauts armed the weapons and waited. As the alien fleet crossed the orbit of the moon, General Tae-young received authorization codes from the United Nations. These codes unlocked humanity's entire arsenal. Every weapon system on the planet was now under his control, coordinated with the other zone commanders. Nuclear missiles in silos, submarines hidden in the ocean depths, bombers ready to take off, artillery positions on every continent, millions of soldiers with billions of bullets, and hidden systems that most people did not know existed. Railguns that could accelerate projectiles to impossible speeds, electromagnetic pulse weapons, chemical agents, biological weapons, experimental technology that had been tested but never used in war. All of it designed by humans to kill humans. All of it now pointed at the aliens. Sir, the enemy fleet is entering weapons range, an officer reported. Tae-young took a deep breath. In a few minutes the battle would begin. Humanity would either survive or perish. There would be no second chances. He opened a communication channel to all forces under his command. Every soldier, every pilot, every sailor heard his voice. All units, this is General Tae-young. In a moment we will engage the enemy. They think we are weak. They think we will surrender. They trained for 100 years to conquer us, but they made one mistake. He paused, looking at the screen showing alien ships descending toward Earth. They forgot that we have been training too, not for 100 years, but for thousands of years. We have been fighting wars since we lived in caves. We have been perfecting weapons. The Vrexian landing craft entered Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Supreme Commander Thralxus watched from his flagship with satisfaction. Below him he could see the cities of Earth, glowing with lights in the darkness. Soon those lights would belong to the Vrexian Empire. First wave landing in 30 seconds, his operations officer reported. Shields at full power. No resistance detected. Then Earth opened fire. Thousands of missiles launched from the ground, streaking upward on trails of fire. The Vrexian sensors detected them immediately. Primitive missiles incoming, the defensive officer said. Energy shields engaging. The missiles struck the Vrexian shields and exploded harmlessly. The force fields absorbed the blasts easily. Some landing craft shook slightly, but none were damaged. As expected, Thralxus said. Their weapons are useless. Continue landing procedures, but something was wrong. The missiles kept coming. Not dozens, but hundreds. Then thousands. The sky filled with explosions as missiles detonated against the Vrexian shields. The force fields glowed brighter and brighter, working harder to deflect the endless stream of projectiles. "This is inefficient," one officer commented. "They must know their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Why waste so many?" The answer came 30 seconds later. Hidden among the conventional missiles were different weapons. Electromagnetic pulse devices. They did not try to break through the shields. Instead, they exploded near the landing craft and sent waves of energy through the shields, disrupting electronics. 50 Vrexian landing craft suddenly lost power. Their shields died. Their engines stopped. They fell from the sky like rocks, crashing into mountains and oceans. "What happened?" Thralxus demanded. "Electromagnetic weapons!" the defensive officer shouted. "They used their primitive missiles as a distraction." The landing craft that survived continued their descent. They were still strong, still numerous. The humans had destroyed only a tiny fraction of the invasion force, but the humans were not done. As the first landing craft touched down outside Seoul, the doors opened and Vrexian warriors emerged. They stepped onto Earth's soil with confidence, weapons ready. They expected to see frightened humans running away. Instead, they stepped into a trap. The landing zone erupted with fire. Hidden artillery positions opened up from all sides. Shells filled with white phosphorus exploded among the Vrexian warriors. The chemical burned at thousands of degrees, hot enough to melt their armor. Vrexian soldiers screamed and fell. Those who survived the first barrage tried to take cover, but there was no cover. The humans had chosen the landing zone carefully. It was a flat field with no protection, surrounded by hills where the artillery was hidden. More shells came. Thermobaric explosives that sucked the oxygen from the air. Cluster munitions that scattered smaller bombs across the field. Depleted uranium rounds that punched through armor like paper. The Vrexian warriors tried to return fire, but they could not see their enemy. The humans were hidden in bunkers and trenches using weapons designed to kill from far away. "Landing Zone Alpha is taking heavy casualties," an officer reported to Thralxus. "Requesting support. Send reinforcements," Thralxus ordered. "And have the warships provide covering fire." But the warships had problems of their own. In orbit, the Vrexian fleet detected massive energy signatures from Earth's surface. Before they could react, projectiles moving at impossible speeds slammed into their hulls. Railguns, simple weapons that used magnetic force to accelerate chunks of metal to incredible velocities. The Vrexian energy shields were designed to stop lasers and plasma weapons. They had never encountered purely kinetic weapons moving at such speeds. The metal projectiles passed through the shields as if they were not there. They struck the warships and punched straight through, creating holes in hulls that were supposed to be impenetrable. 3 warships exploded. 5 more lost propulsion and began falling toward Earth's atmosphere. "Shields are ineffective against their kinetic weapons," an officer shouted. "Adjusting frequency." "It will not help," another officer said, his voice full of fear. "These are not energy weapons. They are just metal moving very fast. Our shields cannot stop solid matter at those velocities." Fighter pilot Young-soo sat in his cockpit, waiting for the order to launch. He was 28 years old, trained in the Korean Air Force. He had flown hundreds of missions, but never against an alien enemy. "All fighters, you are cleared to engage," the command came through his radio. Young-soo launched with his squadron. 20 fighters rose from the airbase, climbing toward the alien ships in the sky. They knew they were outmatched. Alien technology was superior, but they also knew something the aliens did not. Humans were crazy enough to use anything as a weapon. The squadron fired all their missiles at the closest Vrexian cruiser. The alien ship's shields absorbed most of the damage, but a few missiles got through, creating small fires on the hull. The Vrexian cruiser returned fire. Advanced energy weapons lanced through the sky, tracking the human fighters. Young-soo's radar screamed warnings as the alien weapons locked onto his aircraft. "Break! Break! Break!" his squadron leader shouted. The fighters scattered in all directions, but it was not enough. The alien weapons were too fast, too accurate. 6 fighters exploded in the first seconds of combat. Young-soo saw his friends die on his radar screen. He felt rage and sorrow and fear all at the same time. But his training took over. He did what he had been taught to do when outmatched: improvise. All remaining fighters, this is Young-Soo, he said into his radio. Follow my lead. We are going to do something stupid. He turned his fighter toward the Vrexian cruiser and accelerated to maximum speed. His missiles were gone. His ammunition was almost empty. But his fighter still had fuel, and fuel explodes. He's going to ram it, someone shouted over the radio. We all are, Young-Soo replied. Set your fighters to autopilot, aim for the alien ship, and eject. Let's see if they can shoot down 14 jets flying straight at them. The surviving fighters turned toward the cruiser. The Vrexian weapons targeted them and fired, destroying 3 more. But the rest kept coming. At the last second, the human pilots ejected, letting their automated fighters continue toward the target. 11 jets, each carrying tons of fuel, slammed into the Vrexian cruiser. The explosions ripped open the hull. The cruiser spun out of control and crashed into the ocean. Young-Soo floated down on his parachute, watching the alien ship sink beneath the waves. He had lost most of his squadron, but they had taken down a ship that should have been invincible. On the ground, Teacher Jinna heard the fighting getting closer. Aliens had landed near her school, and they were moving through the neighborhood, clearing buildings. Jinna had sent the children home when the invasion began. Now she waited in the school, weapons ready. She knew the aliens would come. They would search every building. She heard heavy footsteps outside. The door burst open. 6 Vrexian warriors entered, their weapons scanning for targets. They expected civilians, if they expected anyone at all. Jinna was hiding in the ceiling. She waited until all 6 warriors were inside. Then she dropped a bag of explosives she had made from cleaning chemicals and fertilizer. The explosion killed 3 warriors instantly. The other 3 spun around, trying to find their attacker. Jinna was already moving, using the ventilation shafts to change position. She appeared behind them and fired her weapon, hitting one in the exposed joint of his armor. The warrior fell. The 2 remaining aliens fired at her, but she was gone again, moving through the building like a ghost. She had trained in this school. She knew every corner, every hiding place. One by one, she killed the Vrexian warriors, not because she was stronger or better armed, but because she knew the terrain and they did not, because she was willing to use every dirty trick she had learned in her military training, because she was defending her home. When the 6th warrior fell, Jinna collapsed against a wall, shaking. She had killed 6 aliens, but she took no joy in it. She was a teacher, not a soldier. But when monsters came to her school, she had done what needed to be done. Similar scenes played out across the world. The Vrexians were stronger, tougher, and better equipped. But humans had advantages the aliens had not anticipated. They knew their own planet. They used the terrain against their enemies. They set traps in cities, forests, and mountains. They hid in buildings and struck from ambush. They used weapons the Vrexians had never encountered, because humans had designed them specifically to kill other humans. Chemical weapons that targeted respiratory systems. Biological agents that attacked specific cells. Toxins developed over centuries of warfare. Explosives placed in ways that turned buildings into death traps. The Vrexians had trained to fight an honorable battle. The humans fought with no honor at all. They fought to survive, and survival has no rules. In orbit, Supreme Commander Thralxis finally understood the truth. His fleet was losing, not slowly but quickly. Catastrophically casualty report, he demanded. 800,000 dead, an officer reported, his voice shaking. Another 300,000 wounded or trapped on the surface. 47 warships destroyed. The humans they are winning, Commander. Impossible, Thralxis shouted. We trained for 100 years. We have superior technology. We have an explosion rocked the flagship. Warning alarms blared throughout the bridge. The smoke still rose from crash sites around the world when humanity began counting the cost of victory. In Seoul, General Tae-young stood in the command center, staring at casualty reports on the screens. 8,000 human soldiers dead, 20,000 wounded, 12 cities damaged, hundreds of civilian casualties, but they had won. Against all odds, humanity had defeated an enemy that should have crushed them. Sir, we are receiving messages from other nations. An aide reported. They want to know what to do with the alien survivors. Tae-young thought about this carefully. Nearly 1,000 Vrexian warriors had surrendered when their ships were destroyed. They were prisoners now, scattered across different countries. Tell all nations to treat them according to the rules of war, Tae-young said. We are not barbarians. We do not kill prisoners. Yes, sir. Also, the Secretary General wants to speak with you. On the screen, Dae-hyun appeared. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were bright with relief. General Tae-young, congratulations on your victory. It was everyone's victory, Tae-young replied. We fought as one species. Yes, we did, Dae-hyun agreed. And now we face the question of what comes next. The alien ships that escaped are fleeing to their home system. They will tell their people what happened here. Then they will not return, Tae-young said confidently. They trained for 100 years and lost in 12 minutes. They will not make the same mistake twice. Perhaps, Dae-hyun said, but we must prepare for what they might do. I am calling an emergency session of the United Nations. We need to discuss humanity's future in a galaxy that now knows we exist. Across the solar system, the surviving Rexian ships fled toward their home. Inside one damaged vessel, analyst Krelthar reviewed the battle recordings in horror. He had been part of the intelligence team that planned the invasion. He had assured the Supreme Commander that humans were weak. He had been catastrophically wrong. Krelthar studied the footage frame by frame. He saw human weapons that should not have worked against Rexian shields. He saw tactics that made no logical sense. He saw species that fought with a brutality and creativity that the Vrexian Empire had never encountered. We have to warn the High Council, he said to the ship's captain. We have to tell them the truth about humanity. What truth? The captain asked bitterly. That we lost? They already know. No, Krelthar said. The truth about why we lost. When the surviving ships reached the Rexian homeworld, the High Council convened immediately. The Grand Chamber filled with the Empire's most powerful leaders. They demanded answers. Krelthar stood before them, his body still bearing scars from the battle. He activated a holographic display showing Earth. Honored council members, he began. We failed to conquer Earth because we fundamentally misunderstood the human species. We know they were stronger than expected, one council member said impatiently. Get to the point. They were not stronger, Krelthar replied. Their technology is still inferior to ours. Their individual warriors are physically weaker than ours, but they defeated us because they have been preparing for war far longer than we have. He showed footage of human history, wars spanning thousands of years, conflicts over territory, resources, religion, and ideas, weapons development that never stopped, each generation creating more efficient ways to kill. We saw this as proof of their weakness, Krelthar explained. We thought their divided nature made them vulnerable. But we were wrong. Their division made them competitive. Every nation developed weapons to defeat the others. They have thousands of years of experience in warfare, while we have only conquered species who surrendered after the first battle. The council members watched in growing horror as Krelthar showed more footage. Chemical weapons used in wars between humans, biological agents tested on each other, nuclear bombs dropped on their own cities. They created weapons of mass destruction, Krelthar continued, and they used them on themselves. They tested them. They refined them. They learned from each use. When we arrived, they already knew how these weapons worked because they had used them in their own wars. He showed the battle recordings, human tactics that seemed insane but worked. Kamikaze attacks, suicide bombers, soldiers who held positions knowing they would die, civilians who fought as fiercely as trained warriors. They do not fight to win territory or gain honor, Krelthar said. They fight to survive. And when survival is at stake, they have no limits. No tactics are too brutal. No sacrifice is too great. One council member stood, anger in his voice. Are you saying our 100 years of preparation were meaningless? I am saying we prepared for the wrong enemy, Krelthar replied calmly. We trained to fight the humans we saw in their entertainment broadcasts. Peaceful, civilized beings who talked about love and harmony. But those broadcasts were lies. Or rather, they were wishes. Humans want peace, but they excel at war. He showed more data, weapon development timelines, military budgets. The sheer number of ways humans had invented to kill each other. In the last 100 years alone, while we were preparing to invade them, humans fought 2 global wars. Hundreds of smaller wars, thousands of conflicts. They killed over 100 million of their own kind, and every war taught them something new. Every conflict improved their tactics. Every death refined their weapons. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. The worst part, Krelthar continued, is that the weapons they used against us were not even their most powerful. The nuclear devices they detonated in our fleet were small tactical weapons. They have bombs thousands of times more powerful. They have enough nuclear weapons to destroy their own planet several times over. They built these to use on each other, and they held them back against us." He paused, letting that sink in. "They held back," he repeated, "because they wanted to see what we could do. Because they wanted to test their conventional forces first. We brought our full military might and they treated it as a training exercise." A council member's voice was barely a whisper. "Then what are they truly capable of?" "I do not know," Krelthar admitted. "Neither do they, I think. They have never had to use their full military power against a single enemy. They have always been too busy fighting each other." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to try again with better preparation. Others wanted to quarantine the Sol system and never return. A few suggested offering peace, but most considered that too risky. Finally, they made their decision. A message would be sent to the Galactic Assembly, warning all species about humanity. The Sol system would be declared a forbidden zone. No Vrexian ship would go near it. No contact would be attempted. On Earth, scientists and military analysts studied the captured Vrexian technology. Dr. Jae-sung led a team examining a damaged alien warship that had crashed intact in the Pacific Ocean. "This is incredible," he said to his research team. "Their technology is decades ahead of ours, maybe centuries in some areas." "Then how did we win?" asked another scientist. Jae-sung pulled up tactical analysis on his computer. "We won because they designed their technology to fight a certain way. Energy shields against energy weapons, armor against directed energy. But they never encountered purely kinetic weapons moving at such high velocities. They never faced chemical agents designed to attack biological systems. They never dealt with enemies who used nuclear weapons tactically." He showed a comparison between Vrexian and human weapon systems. "Their weapons are more powerful and efficient, but our weapons are more diverse and brutal. They have one way to kill. We have thousands. They fight with honor and rules. We fight to survive, and survival has no rules." The scientist looked troubled. "So we are more dangerous than they are?" "In a way, yes," Jae-sung admitted. "We are not more advanced. We are not smarter or stronger. But we are meaner. We have been perfecting the art of killing for thousands of years. Every war taught us something. Every conflict made us more efficient at destruction." Across the world, similar conversations took place. Military leaders analyzed the battle. Civilians processed what had happened. Everyone tried to understand how humanity had survived. Fighter pilot Young Soo lay in a hospital bed, recovering from his ejection injuries. General Tae-young came to visit him. "You saved many lives with your actions," Tae-young said. Young Soo shook his head. "I just did what needed to be done. We were going to die anyway, so we made our deaths count." "That is the human way," Tae-young said quietly. "We face impossible odds and find a way to win anyway." In Busan, Haewon returned to her marine biology research. The ocean was polluted with debris from crashed alien ships, and she worked to minimize the environmental damage. But she did it with a new perspective. "We are a strange species," she said to a colleague. "We spend years protecting whales and studying peaceful life. But when threatened, we become the most dangerous predators in existence." Teacher Gina went back to her kindergarten class. The children did not know what she had done during the invasion. They just knew their teacher had kept them safe. She taught them to read and write and be kind to each other, but at night she had nightmares about the 6 alien warriors she had killed. She was not proud of what she had done, but she would do it again to protect her students. Messages began arriving from deep space. The Vrexian Empire's warning to the Galactic Assembly had been intercepted. 5 years had passed since the 12-minute war. The world had changed in ways both visible and invisible. The burn marks from crashed alien ships had faded from fields and cities. Buildings damaged in the battle had been rebuilt. But the deeper changes remained. In Seoul, retired General Tae-young stood before a classroom of military cadets. These young people were the first generation to grow up knowing that humanity was not alone in the universe. They studied not just human warfare, but also alien biology, space combat tactics, and diplomatic protocols. "Today we discuss the invasion," Tae-young said to his students. "Not to celebrate violence, but to understand what happened and why." A young cadet raised her hand. "Sir, why did the aliens lose so badly?" "They were more advanced than us." Tae-young smiled sadly. "They lost because they prepared to fight the humans they wanted us to be. Peaceful, civilized, organized. But we are not those things. We are competitive, creative, and when threatened, we are brutal. They trained for 100 years against an imaginary enemy. We trained for thousands of years against ourselves. He showed them footage from the battle, not to glorify war but to teach lessons. Notice how the aliens fought in formation, organized, following tactics that worked against other species. Now watch how we fought. The footage showed human forces using irregular tactics, ambushes, traps, weapons mixed in ways that made no military sense but worked anyway. Soldiers from different nations who barely spoke the same language but fought together perfectly. We did not fight fair, Tae-young said. We used every advantage we could find, every dirty trick we had learned in our thousands of years of fighting each other. That is why we won, not because we were better, but because we were willing to do whatever it took to survive. High above Earth, Young-soo worked at Orbital Defense Station 3. The former fighter pilot now commanded one of 12 massive platforms that ringed the planet. Each station was armed with weapons designed from both human and captured alien technology. Young-soo looked at Earth through the observation window. The blue planet glowed peacefully below him, but he knew that peace was guarded by constant vigilance. The stations never slept. Sensors scanned deep space continuously, watching for any ships approaching the Sol system. Commander, we are receiving a transmission, a communications officer reported. It is not from Earth. Source appears to be deep space beyond the Kuiper Belt. Young-soo felt his heart rate increase. Is it another invasion fleet? Negative. Single ship, small size. They are broadcasting a message. It says they come in peace. Young-soo looked at the sensor data carefully. One ship, not a fleet. Not military. But he had learned to be cautious. Send the standard warning. Tell them they are entering quarantine space. Any hostile action will be met with immediate destruction. The response came quickly. We understand. We mean no harm. We are the Remnari. We wish to speak with humanity. On Earth, Secretary General Dae-hyun received the news in his office at the United Nations. 5 years as leader during humanity's most difficult time had aged him. His hair was gray now, his face lined with stress, but his eyes were still sharp. The Remnari, he said thoughtfully. Do we know anything about them? An intelligence officer shook her head. Nothing, sir. We have been monitoring alien communications for 5 years, but we have never heard this name before. Then we proceed carefully. Tell Young-soo to maintain weapons lock on their ship but allow them to approach. We will meet them in orbit, not on Earth's surface. The Remnari ship docked with Orbital Defense Station 3 2 days later. When the airlock opened, Young-soo and his security team stood ready with weapons. But the beings that emerged were not threatening. They were small, only about 4 feet tall, with thin bodies and large eyes. They moved slowly, peacefully. Their leader stepped forward and spoke through a translation device. Thank you for seeing us. We know you do not trust easily. We understand why. Who are you? Young-soo asked, his weapon still ready. We are survivors, the Remnari replied. 20 years ago, the Vrexian Empire invaded our world. We tried to surrender thinking they would be merciful. They were not. They killed 90% of our population and enslaved the rest. We have been hiding on refugee ships ever since. Young-soo lowered his weapon slightly. Why come to us? Because you defeated them. In 12 minutes you did what we could not do in 20 years of suffering. You showed the galaxy that the Vrexians can be beaten. You gave us hope. The Remnari leader paused. But we also came to warn you. The Galactic Assembly has declared your system quarantined. Many species fear you. They see only your violence, not your reasons for it. They do not understand that you fight to survive, not to conquer. What does this quarantine mean? Young-soo asked. It means you are isolated. No trade, no communication, no contact with other civilizations. They hope that in a few thousand years you will become peaceful enough to join them. Young-soo felt anger rising. Humanity had defended itself against an unprovoked invasion, and now they were being punished for it? The Remnari seemed to sense his feelings. We do not agree with the quarantine. That is why we came. Some of us believe humanity should not be isolated. You have much to offer the galaxy. But you must be careful. Fear makes empires dangerous. This conversation was reported to Earth. The United Nations debated for weeks about what to do. Some wanted to respect the quarantine and stay isolated. Others wanted to break through it and force the galaxy to accept humanity. Dr. Jae-sung led a team of scientists working on faster-than-light travel based on captured Vrexian technology. They were close to a breakthrough. Soon, humanity would have the ability to travel to other star systems. If we develop this technology, Jae-sung said at a UN hearing, we can explore beyond our solar system. We can find allies. We can show the galaxy that we are more than just warriors. Or we can start new wars, another scientist countered. We barely survived first contact. Do we really want to risk more? The debate continued, but a decision was slowly forming. Humanity would not hide. They would not cower behind their quarantine. But they would also not rush into the galaxy with weapons ready. They would send a small mission, a ship with no weapons, a crew of scientists, artists, teachers, and diplomats, people who represented humanity's best qualities, not its worst. Hae-won, the marine biologist, volunteered immediately. I spent my life studying peaceful creatures, she said. Let me show the galaxy that humans can be peaceful too. Linguist Minho joined the crew. He had spent 5 years learning alien languages and now spoke 17 of them fluently. Someone needs to talk to these species, he said. Someone needs to explain who we really are. Construction worker Sung-ho, who had learned zero-gravity engineering after the invasion, signed up. I build things, he said simply. I want to build bridges between worlds, not weapons. 50 volunteers total. Each from a different background, a different culture, a different part of Earth. Together they represented humanity's diversity and potential. The ship was named Harmony. The name was chosen carefully. It was a promise and a hope. A statement that humanity could be more than its violent history. On the day of the launch, crowds gathered in Seoul, New York, Moscow, Beijing, and every major city on Earth. They watched on screens as the ship prepared to leave. Secretary General Dae-hyun gave a short speech. 5 years ago, we fought for our survival. We showed the galaxy what humans can do when threatened. Today, we show them what humans can do when given a chance. The ship carries no weapons, but it carries something more powerful, our hope for a better future. The ship launched on the 5th anniversary of the invasion. As it accelerated away from Earth, millions of people watched. Some cried, some cheered. All felt the weight of what this meant. For the first time in human history, people were leaving the solar system. They were going to meet alien civilizations, not as conquerors or victims, but as neighbors. In a classroom in Seoul, Gina taught her kindergarten students about the ship. One little girl asked, "Teacher, will they be safe?" Gina thought about the galaxy that feared humanity. She thought about the species who wanted them quarantined. She thought about all the unknowns waiting in the darkness of space. They will be as safe as we can make them, she answered honestly. But more importantly, they are brave. They are going into the unknown to show that humans are more than fighters. We are also explorers, scientists, artists, and friends. On the edge of Rexian space, a monitoring station detected the human ship. The commander immediately sent a priority message to his superiors. Single human vessel detected. No weapons. Crew of 50. They are broadcasting messages of peace in multiple languages. Orders? The response took longer this time. The Vrexian High Council debated what to do. Finally, the message came back. Do not engage. Do not interfere. Observe and report only. The Vrexian commander watched the human ship on his sensors. 5 years ago, his people had sent millions of warriors to conquer Earth. They had lost in 12 minutes. Now 50 unarmed humans traveled through space, and the Vrexian Empire was afraid to even talk to them. What makes them so dangerous? A young Vrexian officer asked. The commander thought about this carefully. They are not dangerous because they are strong. They are dangerous because they refuse to accept limits.